And we are live, buddy. Good to see you.
You too, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We were just joking off camera about how we just basically rolled out of bed and decided to do a live webinar today. So I did this one by myself, guys. So if it's screwed up in any way, don't blame my director, Zane, who usually directs the shows on this channel. But we're doing it seat of pants today because that's how branding is on the internet. You just got to roll with it.
If you have a good plan.
Yeah. So, welcome everybody who manages to make it to this. If you don't make it live with us, I'll try and check and see if anybody's leaving any questions for us. So we'll have a little interactive element at the end. But if you manage to only make it for the recording, that's cool. We'll have some good tidbits on here for you. So with me today is Erik Stafford from the Opportunity Engineering Facebook group, a good friend of mine. We've done co-trainings for the Cult of Copy before. The last one we did was on lead generation, right? Do you want to? Yeah, for lead generation, specifically for copywriters, but I've heard from a lot of people that it generally applies to anyone selling marketing services. Obviously, needs a little bit of adaptation, but give us like a 30-second little rundown of what we covered on that, Erik.
Sure, yeah, I got to be honest with you, dude. It's really bothering me that you have a lower third and I don't. I know that when I used to do Hangouts back in the day, I had the whole lower third figured out and I had all the plugins. This is your laptop. I don't have it. I got to be honest with you. It's bothering me. I feel unbranded.
I, I, I can turn it off and make you feel better.
Gotta leave yours. Just because you have your shit sorted, don't let me make you feel bad.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, the first training you and I did was on how to find and land clients, and I think the training kind of came about because obviously in the world, we had pitched sold clients for I don't know 100 years, um, and there's lots of different ways to go about it, and I think one of the big problems we have is that there's this whole concept of, all right, I'm gonna hire a salesperson, I'm gonna put them on for 9 to 5. We want you to make calls from 9 to 5 and make what you can. And it's just not very specific. So the whole concept behind that training was how to figure out exactly who to pitch to get the biggest bang for your buck. How to figure out how to skip the meeting, how to figure out how to connect with people before or after or during off hours, how to sell locally without really doing that sort of sales, right? And so just kind of all this stuff that I learned about selling, right? And people love it. It's great training. I'm super proud of that training. It's one of those things, right, where people stop here, guys are on the call. I don't think a lot of people really stop thinking about how much work you had to do over your career and how many books you read and how many letters you wrote to get what's in your head and allow you to sort of on a Facebook, right?
Right.
So
Hey, I hate to interrupt you. It's one of the joys of live broadcasting. Your audio is sort of coming in and out, like not. We don't lose you completely, but like the volume seems to go up and down. I don't know if that's something you can adjust on your end. If it keeps up, I'll just have you jump off the call and then jump back on, and maybe a better connection will work. But
you know what? Give me one second. Let me see if I can work it out.
okay, cool. Well, I'm going to jump in and say what I liked about the training Erik was just talking about, the lead generation training for copywriters. Erik actually came to me with that idea and said, hey, is this something you think the Cult of Copy group would be interested in? And I said yes, because it's something that a lot of people had asked me about, like how to get set up to build, lead generation and get clients to come to you and things like that. And it's something that I didn't have a good answer for just because I was lucky, I guess, the way my career came together, I didn't ever have to do that because I immediately, when I quit my copywriting job at a company and went freelance, my old boss hired me as a freelancer and then started referring me to people. And then they referred me to people, and I never really had to get myself set up to do any kind of lead generation on my own. But I know Erik had done very well in his own business selling marketing services and things. And he had come about it the opposite direction where he had to build up his lead generation stuff. So I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do the training. And it was pretty much almost exactly a year ago that we did it. And it's been one of the more popular, not just guest trainings, but just trainings in general. Um, but enough spiel about that. I think what people came here today to hear about was the branding training that we're currently doing. It's tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. There's a link for it if you want to check it out under the description of this YouTube video, and I'll make that link available to you if you're checking this out on Facebook. Um, but really, I think in general, branding, the concept of branding it's got a bad reputation in the kind of marketing and sort of small business space that we operate in, and I think it's because like it used to be true in the 70s, like at the advent of direct marketing, that whoa, I heard that. um, it used to be true back in the wild western days of 1970s small business marketing, and guys like Dan Kennedy would say that if you're a small business and you're spending money on branding, quote unquote branding campaigns like Madison Avenue style, you're throwing money away because you have no way of measuring the result of that, right? But with the internet, literally you can't not measure the results of any marketing that you're doing, whether there's branding involved or not. So my hypothesis is that if you market on the internet and you're not doing any kind of branding, you're really kind of screwing yourself over, because branding, the mechanism that creates branding in the mind of the consumer, is happening anyway, just because you're participating on the internet. That's how the internet works. And if you're not deliberately taking control of that and creating a brand, that just means whoever's watching you, whoever's following you, is just sort of making up their own, out of whatever they feel like. So I feel like you're really hosing yourself if you do it that way. And it turns out that Erik and I were talking, and this concept of branding, the way we're talking about it, is almost like the prequel training to the last training we did, lead generation, because you should almost be thinking about branding yourself and your business and your services and your products before you even start making them. Would you say that's right, Erik?
Yeah, for sure. And definitely before you start reaching out to clients, if you're a copywriter or if you're in a service business, you have to know who you are and who your ideal audience is and what your message is before you reach out to anyone. Otherwise, they're going to say, hey, what do you do? And you're not going to have an answer. And, no offense to, can you hear me all right, by the way?
Yeah, this is much better.
Sweet. Yeah. Except for the occasional douchebag on a motorcycle. Sorry about that.
Hey, man, that's just that lifestyle porn. You live in Southern Florida. People are going to whiz by on motorcycles.
Right. Yeah. So, no offense to anyone that posts in the Cult of Copy job board, right? But if you're just posting there saying, hey, I'm a copywriter, I can write your shit, you're not going to get any business. You're just not, right? So you had mentioned in a post that it's X-formation, right? It's like exo information, right? And it's so true, right? Your brand it's all the stuff you post online. It's all the stuff people post online about you. It's the friends you're connected with. It's everything, right? People assume certain things about my brand just because you and I take an occasional selfie together.
Right.
That's just how it is, right? And like back in the day when we used to, work for proper clients in the agency world, it was much more controlled, right? So we would create spots, we would create ads, we would create promos, and we would test them to different audiences, and we would do some market research. But essentially, the brand was still ours. We would run focus groups, and at that point, the brand was still ours. We would get some feedback from people, but it was the client's brand, and we just sort of managed it. These days, though, the brand belongs to everyone, because anyone out there on the planet can say whatever they want about you, right? And so, if you're a bit of a negative fucker and you're posting stuff on Facebook about how unhappy you are all the time, or even if you're not that person, but all of your friends are, people are going to assume certain things about you. And like you said, if you don't take control of it, someone else will.
Yeah, because to go back to you mentioned I had done a post about this concept called exformation. For people who don't know what that is, to give a little bit of insight, um, when you have a given message, the information is what's actually in the message, right? Exformation is all the stuff in your brain that relates to that message that helps you give it meaning and context and how to interpret it. So everything you know about the person who wrote it, everything you know about what their values are, who their enemies are, what they stand for, all of that gives context to the message. So where does all that stuff come from that's in your reader's brain already, that they know about you, that they remember about you? Well, it comes from previous messages. So branding used to be super expensive to do back in the day, where you could only do it via expensive publication. You know, getting things in print on a national distribution level was expensive. Getting TV time, radio time, all of that was expensive. But now, because of the internet, like Erik's saying, that publishing, that power of publishing is democratized and it's free and it's ubiquitous. I'm sorry, that's a big word. I'm supposed to not do that. Ubiquitous just means it's everywhere. Um, Everyone's got a smartphone these days. Everyone can publish their opinions. Everyone can not only publish their opinions, but do like really deep research on you without even trying too hard. Like Erik said, just looking you up on Facebook can give people so much information that they can use to judge you and contextualize you, and it affects how they see you. Um, so it's really just something you need to be aware of and take control of and sort of own. And you were talking about how people can be judgmental of who you're associated with via social networks, and that's true. Part of branding for me, the what really worked for me was sort of just figuring out who I was and having the courage to just be that person and not worry about if it was going to affect my business or not, and kind of trust that there were enough people out there that would connect with me and see themselves in me and feel like we're connected and friends and kindred spirits when it came to the marketing stuff, that I would be able to have an audience large enough to support me. And I feel like that's really not that hard to do. So that's one of my key lessons when it came to building a personal brand, is that I knew you have to be congruent with who you are and what you put out there, right?
For sure. Yeah,
So,
yeah. It definitely starts with that, because otherwise you're playing someone on TV
yeah,
and it's no fun, and it doesn't ring as it's not authentic, right? And so, you think about people like Frank Kern. I've met Frank Kern, and he's a laid back, stonery surfer guy.
yeah,
And it comes through in his marketing, and his marketing's very genuine, right? And
yeah.
when
And even when he's wearing the suit and being slick, he's still got that very laid back, very casual. He looks super comfortable in the suit. You know what I mean? He's not. It doesn't ever feel like he's putting on a performance for the sake of, you know, pandering to you in any way.
Right. Now, with that said, also, I'm sure post selectively on social media, because he's managing his image, and he's not going to post stuff on social media that's not congruent with his image. And so, once in a while, I'll see these people post things that'll say, what people post on social image is not their true life. You shouldn't be fooled by that. Well, I mean, to me, and maybe, I don't know, but I just feel that, of course, that's the fucking case, right? I
Right.
mean, I don't post everything in my life on social media. I post stuff that I find interesting, and I post stuff that always I feel is congruent with who I am and what I represent and what I'm trying to achieve, right? And so I think that that's worked great for you, but it's not always easy for people to put themselves out there and trust in the fact that they can be themselves, and sort of generate resonance with people around just being themselves. But
Right.
in every case that I've ever seen or worked on or built for myself or for a client, it has been true. Every single case.
Yeah, and I would say that the real trick to it, because people are like, oh, I'm kind of lame. Like, if you're one of these people that, like, I don't want to make it like a self-help sort of angle thing, but Like if you're the kind of person that's constantly not improving but exploring, doing interesting things, if you do interesting things, like things that you find interesting and you put some time into it, you're going to learn some cool things and you share that with your audience, and it makes you this personality that's worth engaging with, right? Like as long as you're learning new things and doing new things, you're creating new information that is valuable to people, and it makes it so you can be an authentic real person online because people can see that you're getting better. That's why like just being a negative person and complaining all the time doesn't do anything good for your brand. But you can be honest and authentic about like if you had a bad day in business and
Yeah, I mean,
you find like a growth lesson out of it.
yeah, unless being that grumpy negative person is your brand.
Right.
Right?
You can capitalize on that. It's true, especially if you can be funny about it.
Yeah, if that's your brand, that's your brand, right? Like I know, Colin, you and I have chatted before about this, but my entire life, people have been telling me, "Oh yeah, so and so said that I would either love you or hate you, Erik." Like, and I know that you and I have talked about this. You've had that your whole life too. People either love you or hate you. There's not
right.
a lot of in between. And when you look at really successful brands, whether it's individual brands, personal brands, or whether it's businesses or product lines or whatever, the ones that are super successful that have big tribes, people either love them or hate them, right? You think about Apple. People either love Apple or hate Apple. There's not a lot of people that are out there that are like, it's all right.
Right.
And Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Howard Stern. I mean, you could go on and on. Anyone that has really done a good job of polarizing themselves has built an effective brand, right? Because the middle is boring, and you don't walk down the middle, right? I mean, you're very polarizing. You throw people out when they don't follow the rules, and you can be a bit of a dick about it, right?
Here's the trick about it though, because like I feel like you said, I've had a galvanizing personality my whole life, but I feel like if I learned a lesson early on that led to a lot of happiness and self-satisfaction, it's that you got to be like, people are going to either love you or hate you no matter what, and there's not a lot you can do about it. There's just no one is to everyone's taste automatically. Now, a lot of people are not okay with that fact, so they try to alter themselves in some way to please everyone, right? So for the people that feel like, oh, I couldn't be that aggressive or controversial or whatever it is that people see me doing or you doing or anyone with those sort of strong online personalities, it's not that we're altering ourselves to be that way. It's that we've stopped altering ourselves to please everyone, because you just got to be okay with it. Like no matter what you say, somebody's not going to like it. So just don't be afraid of that. And it gives you the confidence to be firm in opinions. So like you're saying, when someone does something I don't like and I kick them out of my group and I'm a jerk about it because that's how I really feel about it, and I'm okay with hurting their feelings because they made me mad and I don't want them in my group anymore. You know what I mean? So like, why be soft about it? Because I'm entitled to feel that way and I want to publish it, and I'm not worried about whether it's going to make some other people not like me, because I know some other people are not going to like me, but they're also going to like the way that I handle it. So
Right.
I would rather serve those people than try and hold back and not do what I really want to do or say what I really want to say. Because like you said, no matter what it is you say or do, there are some people that are just going to hate it. And if you're going to be on the internet, it's guaranteed, because you're exposed to way more people. There's entire groups that exist only to find random strangers and make fun of them. Like
Yeah.
that's just the kind of shithole the internet is sometimes.
By the way, you were going to add me to that group. I just have to remind you of that.
Oh, right.
I think it's important, Colin, to point out that there are boundaries. I set boundaries. I mean, I have no problem posting a selfie of my ass cheeks on the internet, but I'm going to try and avoid discussions about politics, and I'm going to try and avoid discussions about bigotry or racism or homosexuality, because I have super strong feelings about these things. And I tend to find that when I post about them, the replies I get from people lead me to either calling them names or banning them, and all of it degenerates into bullshit. It turns into
Yeah.
something I don't much want. And so I guess really the point that I'm trying to make here is that, if you're even thinking about what those boundaries are, or who you are, or what parts of your amplify to
Yeah.
create your brand while still being true to yourself, that's a huge fucking first step over what most marketers even bother to do.
It
Right?
is. It
You're
is.
thinking about branding yourself at that point if you're thinking about those rules of engagement and how you want people to perceive you.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to point out that deciding what you're not going to say, and listen, it's not, when we're talking about putting things online, it's not even what you're going to say or what you're going to think or what you're going to believe. You need to think of putting things on the internet. Like, if you're a business person and you're building a personal brand, you're no longer like a civilian. So social media, you need to think of it as, it's not like your journal that you're sharing with your friends. You're publishing. It's no different than, you got to think of it of like, you went down to the printing office and you paid them to put what you're saying on pieces of paper, and you're standing on the street corner handing them to people who walk by. If you're not okay with that, if you wouldn't do that, then you shouldn't publish it online if you're like participating as yourself online in business, right? Because that's what we're talking about. That stuff gets associated with you, but you're not violating that authenticity, that being true to yourself, just because you choose not to publish something, right? That's the trick. Is like, some people say, well, I have to keep it real, so I got to say all this crazy stuff that I believe because I have to, right? You don't like, so if there's something that you feel like, it's not that you're compromising by not saying it. It's that if there's nothing to gain, if there's no way for you to profit from publishing something that would be controversial, like if there's only a downside, then avoid it. And there's no problem with that. It doesn't make you inauthentic to not comment on it as a public figure. But if it is something that you believe strongly in and you can profit from it, that's the trick. Is that it's not necessarily going to alienate you from your audience. So like, a lot of times, like Erik said, he avoids political discussions. I don't, because I have the kind of group where we talk about that kind of thing from a marketing standpoint, and I have a reputation that I've deliberately cultivated, that I will argue with people even using positions I don't personally agree with, because arguing with people is part of how I practice persuasion and influence and getting people to say what they really mean, and all of these nutty psychological things I try to associate myself with business wise. So I have a reputation for doing that, but I can get away with it because I have a way to profit from it business wise, right? So like, I'll never get into a political or religious discussion with someone where we're the only two people having that discussion, because you're not going to change anyone's mind. But if it's a thread that's on fire and I know hundreds of people are paying attention to it, I will have that conversation and argument in public, because I can gain from all of the people who get to see it happening, right? So I'm looking at it from the standpoint, I profit because there's an audience there, some of whom will agree with me and then follow me away from that thread and end up being followers of either my timeline or my group or my page or whatever it is that I'm doing.
Yeah, and others who will hate you, and you're fine with that.
Right, because they weren't going to like my products anyway. So because my products are so wrapped around in my identity and who I am and my point of view, they're tightly synced. Um, but I think the underlying thread in the conversation we're having here is that, like, this is what branding is, and it's not what people think when they're like, oh, I shouldn't be wasting money on a fancy logo, or a jingle or a slogan. Like, the stuff you think of when you think of corporate branding, Madison Avenue branding, it's not really the same as what people sort of think of as a personal brand that you're using online. But really, the two can kind of integrate online, because it's easy to do graphics, it's easy to publish, it's easy to share. all of those mechanisms that companies used to have to pay millions and millions of dollars to just get an idea out there. Like you can do it for free now. Kids do it on accident with a
Yeah.
YouTube channel of them unwrapping their toys.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different pieces that can make up a brand that, each individual person or company's brand is completely different. I mean, you look just at, say, for example, the insurance market, right?
Yeah.
Geico's brand is based on a strap line and a lizard for the most part. Now they've deviated from the lizard a little bit, and they've done some stuff with cavemen and with some other stuff, but they've got a solid brand based on their strap line, the small little sentence of words that they use in every ad, right? And then you
Yep.
look at Flow. See, that's based on a persona or a caricature of a character, and she's in every single ad, right? And so there are different elements for each brand. I was a good example of this is I posted yesterday on Facebook about people that sign off their emails the same way every single time they email, right?
Yep.
Like a friend of mine, Anthony Aries, writes "Yours for prosperity" every single time he emails.
Right.
Multiple times a
He
wequick for years, right? Tellman says "shabambo," which
right.
who the fuck knows what that means, but that's Tellman's thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Tom,
It's funny because I had a little tidbit that someone had asked me a question on a panel at JV Zoo where we just were in Orlando and hung out. Um, they asked how a copywriter, like, what's the best way for a copywriter to sort of get into someone else's voice? And I said the trick is it's really hard to mimic someone's voice. So instead what you do is in their normal communications you throw in some kind of exaggeration or phrase and then just put that in whatever you normally would write and it will sound like them when their audience encounters that little trigger word. So like for Anthony Aries, he says giddy up all the time.
yep,
Like if I'm reading something and I didn't realize he wrote it, if I see the word giddy up in there, it's all of a sudden out loud in my mind when I read it, his voice saying.
yep. Yeah, I
Um,
love it. I mean, so branding is about so much more than a logo. It's about repetition of imagery, words, slogans, jingles, catchlines, and it's about not just repetition but language, right? Like every week or 2 weeks you share a post that you found somewhere about someone getting shot, and you comment about our right to bear arms, which is funny and ridiculous and silly and stupid and makes me a little angry because that's the way
right,
American. But whatever it does, it always makes me think of Colin, right?
right,
Whatever else
right.
it makes me feel, it always makes me think of you.
What's funny is that started out as an experiment to where I wanted to do something political, but make it so that it didn't actually make any kind of statement on its own, right? So what I do, the way that I do those, and for those who don't know, like I don't post these in any of my business groups. This is just on my personal timeline on Facebook, but I do have like 5,000 friends, so a lot of people see it. What I do is any story that crosses my news feed about a shooting in America, regardless of the context, the only thing is if I see it and it's about a shooting in America, I repost it. And then all I do is quote the Second Amendment of the US Constitution about the right to bear arms. I just quote it verbatim and I don't put any comment, I don't put any spin. I just post the news story and put the quote. And it creates the most insane, divisive discussions, and almost everyone who reads those thinks they know what my position is. But I didn't say anything. I just quoted the Constitution and posted the news story. So that again goes back to I have this brand that I've built on purpose because I like to do it, but because I also figured out a way to profit from it of kind of like messing with people. Like there are people who know that
Pushing
I'm not.
people's buttons.
Yeah, yeah, and that works for me because I'm associated with it. It reinforces my brand as what I do, what I talk about, what my content is for me to do that. Like it doesn't hurt me to do that. But if you are like a dentist, having a reputation for fucking with people is probably not really going to serve you. So it's one of those things, like you were saying, you need to decide what your clientele is and what your business is going to be about and who you serve. So like we were talking about guys in suits putting on a facade earlier. Like there's some people who that's not an image. Like they like wearing suits. That's the world they want to be a part of. They've always wanted to be, wearing a necktie, shaking hands, taking a meeting, doing all that kind of stuff. That's what they want. And
they look good in
awesome.
suits because they're comfortable in them.
Right, right. And that's awesome if you want to do that. If that's the world you want to get involved in, you want to do that. Plenty of people like that kind of thing. Like the deal is figure out what you want to be and then start looking for the people that are congruent with that. And then depending on what it is that you do, the internet is like your best bet of finding all of those people who would just like you upon meeting you naturally. And then the branding part is just being conscious of, okay, here are the things that I do that people like. These are the feelings that I want people to have when they remember me. So like you were talking about Geico, they have a lizard and they have a slogan, but every commercial with the lizard and the slogan is meant to make you chuckle, so that when you're looking at all the brands of car insurance that you might possibly buy, theirs is the one that makes you chuckle when you look at the list. You're right. So it's a different feeling that makes them stand out from, like, who is it? That is it Allstate that has the dude who used to be the president in 24?
Yeah, the guy with the serious voice.
You're right, right. And their whole angle is completely different. But when you're looking at a list of insurers, they're going for the feelings of stability and reliability, and we're there for you. And this guy was
they're essentially going for older, more conservative people.
right. And then you got Geico, who's got a lizard with a British accent who tells jokes, and it makes you chuckle.
They're
So
going
like
for a younger audience.
yeah. So that's a concern too, is like who are you selling to? What are you trying to say to them? And again, it's if you are a big business, if you are an agency, and there's like a corporate usness to you, where like when you put out an official communication, you're speaking for an organization of like dozens, if not hundreds of people. That's a different concern than if you're like a freelancer or a very small agency that uses outsourcing, where you are the face of your company and you are the figure that your customers and clients are interacting with. But you just got to decide what you're about, who you want to work with, because that's what's great about the internet. There's like 650 million English speaking internet users. That's who I consider as my potential audience, right? If you speak and read in English, you can potentially consume and like what I have to say. So I figure out of those 650 million people, there are a significant amount of them willing to pay me for the expert knowledge that I have without me having to present it or package it in any way that I don't want to, right? So I look at my business as I'm going to do it the way that I want, and then I'm going to build an audience out of all of the people who are like, yeah, okay, I like that, right? Instead of I'm going to build something that everyone's going to like, and I'm going to put it out there, and those people are going to find it.
Yeah, see, it's funny because you've stripped your business down. You've removed hero graphics and product images. You've removed sales letters. You've removed a lot of things from your business, and yet you have an extremely solid brand because you're focused on, there's lots of little intangibles that you do, Colin, and that we'll talk about tomorrow, and I can't wait. But like, we mentioned briefly, like memes and language libraries. Like you have to speak the audience's language. So you work in copywriting, you have to know what the AIDA formula is, and you have to understand a thing or two about persuasion, which you clearly do. You speak the language of that audience, right?
Yeah.
But you're also working to create your own language around your group, right? Like the people in your group are called cultists. Lady Gaga's done an awesome job of this, right? Like she's got, her fans are called like little monsters or whatever. She calls them her little monsters. The Grateful Dead did an amazing job of creating languages around their thing. There was like Shakedown Street where everyone sold shit, and there was Custies were customers, and Deadheads is what they called their audience. And so they're speaking the language of their market, but then they're creating a little language over here that's specific to people who feel like they can identify with or be part of that tribe, right? And it's a very powerful thing, man, to feel like you're part of a tribe, right? And I feel like I'm part of the cult. You know, I feel powerful, and I feel enriched, and I feel happy, you know, when I post stuff there and I see stuff and I'm like, oh shit, the cult would love this. And I post it there and people like it. It's a very empowering feeling to be a part of something, right?
It is. It is. And that's something that people, I think, are missing out on when they have that old attitude of like, oh, branding's bad, right? From this holdover of, you know, 70s style business direct marketing is really where that hate for branding comes from. But you look at
I think Colin, also people just don't see how it turns into ROI. It's one of those words like leverage that just got overused to the point where people don't really understand what it means.
Yeah, because like you're saying, okay, so I built a community for all of my customers and clients and followers and fans to hang out in and interact and talk about this field of interest that we have in common that we all love, right? Like your customers are already doing that somewhere on the internet because they like your topic. Like that, you can have a brand built around that if you own that space where people collect and have those conversations and talk about that stuff. Your customers are already doing that, so why would you not have a strong brand and build that for them, right? So like really functionally, business wise, as far as dollars in my pocket as a business person, the cult of copy is just like my email list essentially, right? Like it operates functionally the same way that an email list would for other businesses, where if I want to make a little money, I think of something to sell them, I find something to sell them, I post a message, some of them buy it. That's functionally what they are. But to them, to the people in the list, my brand is part of their identity. Like they feel like they belong. It's a group. They're in it. We have inside jokes. There's a clear us versus them kind of thing. And it was going to happen anyway. Like there's all these other marketing groups. Why wouldn't I have one? You know what I mean? Like the branding part of that is already occurring on the internet. And all I have to do to participate and take control and build something out of it is say, okay, well, this is my little area over here. I've roped it off. I put up some cones. There's some tape. You're cool. I'll move the velvet rope aside. You can come in. Now we're in this little clique, and everyone else is not. But we have our own little thing here. And it feels cool and small and engaging. But I'm approaching like 17,000 people in that group. You know, it's not a small group anymore, but that specialness, that sense of not like I think of it as a two-way belonging, right? Like the group belongs to you and you belong to the group. And like branding wise, that can be the same as any company. Like Apple's customers feel like they are in a group. They're an insider group and there's an outsider group. They even literally had us versus them commercials with the two guys, the guy who was the Mac and the nerdy guy who was the PC guy. Like they want, even a huge company like Apple, which is like, I think they're the richest company on earth, if I remember right. They treat their customers as though they're a community, and that's the secret of their quote unquote brand. It's not the logo, it's not the font. All of those things are cool to their audience because they're just the symbols that they use to recognize each other, right? Like all the Apple logo is when you see someone, you're an Apple fan and you see someone carrying a thing with the logo, you're like, ah, cool. That guy's my buddy.
You know, that's the key. And that's why, you know, I know that everyone says this when they're selling something. They say, you know, this is going to change your business or this is going to change your life or whatever, right? But I really do honestly, like in my heart, believe that the people that understand these tactics and put them to play in their business will be better off than their competition. I just believe that with all my heart. It's happened my whole life in every business I've ever built, every client I've ever worked for. And the reason why is what you just said, Colin. It's because you're not only building an audience of, either prospects or customers or repeat customers, right? Every business has those three things, right? They have prospects, customers, and repeat customers. But what you're doing is you're turning those repeat customers into absolute junkies. Like, you're turning them into fanatics. Like, when all the pieces are clicking and they have things they can grab onto that they can like identify you by, whether it's like you had said, an Apple logo or an image or a strap line or a feeling or a community or whatever, they'll recommend you to every single person they come across, right? Like, I'm a Mac guy. All our business runs on Mac. My kids have, iPads and MacBooks and all iPhones and all that shit, right? But not only that, but I tell everyone who even mentions computing in a sentence how much easier my life is and how happy I am because I'm a Mac guy, right? And
Right.
it's the same with restaurants. It's the same with cars. If you dial it in and do it right, I mean, you look at Elon Musk. He just had the biggest product launch ever, and he did a fuck it, do it live, by the way, Colin. The car's not even ready yet.
I know.
Not even ready yet. And he sold like $80 billion worth of electronic cars, right? And and that's just another example. Fiddle, right? The fuck it, do it live method that you teach people. Anthony and I were talking with a couple people in Orlando at that event we were all at, and someone said, I'm just going to fiddle it. And what he meant was he's just going to do it live, right? Do the training live. But that's language you created around a product that you created that is now getting wider acceptance in the marketplace. And when little intangible things like that start to happen, I'm telling you, it has a major impact on your business, because you've got a little army of people out there who are like, oh my God, you got to see Deadpool. Or they're like, oh my God, you got to buy a Mac. Or they're like, have you joined the cult of copy yet? Right? It's very effective.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that gives me a really strong point that I think we can wrap it up on, because I know you said you had something to get into in a minute. But that idea that someone at an event was repeating my nomenclature that I created for a product. The trick with that, what we're talking about, is this brand building. Like, you got an idea of what you're about and what you want to do and how you want to, interact with your market, right? Well, that fiddle, FIDIL, it stands for fuck it, do it live. It's the name that I gave to the way that I do my products, where I sell them before they exist. Similar to what we're doing now. You can buy the training on branding from the link that's below this video on YouTube. We haven't done the training yet, but you can buy it, and then we'll show up and do it, and everyone's going to get what they paid for. But that brand, that name brand, came about because of a conversation that I was having with my audience. I didn't sit there and formulate it and come up with that as a product name. I did my first training, and people were like, well, how did you do it? And I was like, well, I kept not making videos for my membership site. So I saw that video of Bill O'Reilly, I think it was, had a meltdown on like Inside Edition because they kept screwing up his cue cards, and it was like one of these meme videos that got spread around the internet of him being on the air, just being like, fuck it, we'll do it live, right? Like, because he just got mad that they kept screwing up the cue card. So he's like, I'll do it live on the air. Who cares? So I said, I just adopted that Bill O'Reilly, fuck it, do it live attitude. And I think it was Caliban Darklock who then took that and just used it as an acronym to repeat the next time we talked about that as like a business attitude. And then when I went to teach people how to do products live the way that I did, I needed a name for it. So I took that and applied it. And now people in my market who may or may not even be customers of mine know it as the name for that methodology. And I didn't invent it. I didn't like sit down and formulate it. I didn't have a master plan. It just, because I have conversations with my audience about our mutual interests and what it is that I teach and what it is that I do, we created that together, and now it belongs to all of us. Even though if you want to buy the fiddle training on how to do products the way that I do, I'm the one who sells it. No one else does. But that name is part of the conversation, right? And that's the power of branding, is that word doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the whole community. We built it together.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I mean, it's a perfect example. And, I'm excited. I'm excited, Colin, to do this training. Like I don't teach this stuff very often because, quite honestly, it's a hard sell. Like you had said, people just don't understand the power of it and the importance of it. But I'm really looking forward to blowing some people's heads open tomorrow. It's incredibly powerful stuff, man. It's like, I believe in it. It's like I believe that branding is kind of the most important thing I've ever learned about business.
I agree with that. I agree with that. It's one of those things where I was doing it and I didn't realize it was branding until I started reading more about branding, which I had avoided because everyone you learn from when it comes to direct marketing is like branding is bad. But that's it, like it's 2016, man. It's happening anyway. Like you're not putting postcards in someone's mailbox as your primary form of communication. You have you have literally the same tools that the most powerful communications companies on earth have. Like you have those in your pocket if you own a smartphone. So like if you're not building a brand, you're it's just not working, you know? Like why are you even using the internet if you're not taking advantage of it in that fashion? That's it. That's all I got, man.
Thanks, brother. It's good to see you, man. I'm looking forward to doing the training with you tomorrow.
For real. I'm happy to do it. Everyone come along. You can join us. The link for the training again is in the description of this video on YouTube. I'll post it again on Facebook if you follow me there. If you're on my email list, you're going to be hearing about it again today. But that's it. It's tomorrow, Thursday, April 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern. And if you had fun listening to me and Erik talk, you will have fun tomorrow listening to us teach you how to actually do some of the stuff we talked about today. So thanks, Erik, for doing the video. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Have a great day. I'm going to go stop the broadcast now. You're going to see me awkwardly walk away to do it. Bye.
Hey, thanks, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.